PM. And we will begin our meeting. Let's see here. Item 1.1, policy subcommittee members. We have trustee Marcia Cloninger here. We have trustee Ellen Stoddard and myself. Yay. Okay. Item number 2.1, public comment.
We have Art Oldine, and I think Jamie wanted to make a comment. So Art said he would raise his hand when he was ready.
Okay.
So if you want to go.
Okay, I've timed myself. I have, Pamini said I have 5 minutes, but sometimes it's 3 minutes. I've timed myself at 3 minutes and 45 seconds. That'd be okay.
Go for it.
Go for it.
I'm speaking today as the Faculty Association representative to the College Planning Council. Agenda item 4.2 introduces a new process for college policies and procedures. Over the last decades, the college has successfully followed a collaborative process that included the Board Policies and Procedures Committee, or BPAC, and allowed input and feedback from all constituency groups. The new proposed process in item 4.2 is problematic and another example of the lack of communication and collegial consultation on the part of the administration. A central feature of the proposed plan is the elimination of the aforementioned BPAP committee. The first time the BPAP committee itself heard about this plan was during their meeting on May 3rd, when they were told that their committee was being disbanded. The new flowchart attached to today's agenda was previously introduced on May 7th at CPC with no prior notice to faculty or staff. This dramatic change to how administrative procedures are managed on this campus was created entirely without faculty knowledge. Faculty, and in particular the Faculty Association, are deeply concerned about this plan. After the May 7th CPC meeting, the committee was left with the impression that the discussion concerning the new plan would continue in the fall and that BPAP would continue in the interim. According to BP 2410, only after this discussion process, quote, in consultation with the appropriate participatory governance groups, quote, is complete, would it be appropriate to bring the new process to the board. However, when the president of the Academic Senate respectfully asked the superintendent president to remove the administrative procedure and the proposed new flow chart from today's agenda as being premature, the response was, quote, I agreed to wait until spring 2025 for full implementation, unquote. That is a very different sentiment than how the May 7th CPC meeting was concluded. The FA has what is known as a thin contract. What this means is that for decades, the FA, the Academic Senate, and the administration have collaborated on many faculty working conditions that were included in our BPAP process instead of being negotiated. The FA is comfortable with the BPAP committee determining these working conditions outside of the negotiations process, as this committee is composed of faculty, staff, and managers with expertise. However, we are not comfortable with policies governing our working conditions being determined by this new process. Under these conditions, the FA would be forced to move all working conditions and related items from our administrative procedures and into negotiations. This would cause a great deal of unnecessary work and expense for everyone involved, but more importantly, would be a massive change to the collaborative culture that was created by our BPAP process. Given these major concerns, we do not feel it is appropriate for the Board Policy Subcommittee to be discussing the AP and a new flowchart at this time. CPC members are largely unaware that this topic is on your agenda today. It certainly was not communicated either to faculty or to the CPC that this was the case. Please know that we are interested and invested in working together towards improving participatory governance processes and to increase the transparency the superintendent president envisions. However, this new process actually reduces the opportunity for informed collaboration among all constituencies to craft policy. Thank you for listening and considering the faculty and FA concerns.
Jamie? I don't mean to interrupt here, but these are more informal discussions than at the board meeting. So I envision you can talk later if you wish about some particular.
I may or may not have.
You may run to something else, but I just wanted you to know.
There are other faculty representatives here that can probably do a better job than I.
Any of them can. I mean, you know, this is.
That's good to hear.
This has been more informal.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good to hear.
Are there any hands raised? I don't see me either. I don't even know where to look.
But it looked like trustee Stoddard had
question.
What?
Did you have a
I'm sorry, I
question?
thought you were gonna ask something.
Well, I'm gonna wait till we get to that place
Okay.
because I don't really understand. I don't really understand what we're talking about.
Okay,
Okay,
All right, well, being that I don't see any other raised hands, and can you tell me, the,
gentleman who just speaking,
his name is Jamie Campbell. He was from the FA.
thank you.
all right, we're gonna move on to item 3.1, approval of the minutes from April 15, 2024.
I move that we approve the minutes from April 24, was it?
Yes,
Yes, I move that we approve those minutes.
And I second.
Okay.
any discussion?
I have a question, and it's my fault because I wasn't here.
Oh, it was April 15th, the minute, April 15th, 2024.
Mhm.
Yeah, under the decorum.
Yes.
3.3, it talks about you guys passed a motion to accept the recommended changes and additional edits. And my recollection when we were talking about it before was that, I think it was Ellen who had said, everybody, including board members, are expected to be courteous. And what we've got now is community and board members, but we're missing employees.
Mm.
Well, doesn't it say everyone?
No, it doesn't
Hold
say
on.
everyone, at least the one I'm looking at,
Hold on,
that I got here.
so are you looking at this one or the other one?
The pinkest one, I think, this, not the community college one.
You're looking at,
Well,
so I looked at my
oh,
notes.
yes, I see that.
And that sentence would have gone where?
The pink, the first pink.
First pink.
Oh, to include everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah, the community.
I think Ellen,
Well, I think because they have the word community.
yeah, but that's generally
That's
considered,
broad for you?
no, it's generally considered too narrow in the sense that it's non-employee, not employees. When we refer to community.
Okay,
Okay, so we have this thing from the Community College League and then we have our own. Were we thinking we would just adopt the Community College League?
No, that was, I believe we were passing that along because you all just went to a
Yes.
policy you just went to a policy update training at CCLC. And so this is what CCLC provided as a policy update.
right,
But colleges don't have to adopt it in this way. It's just the update that we did. Every district can make a
Okay.
choice. I think to remember. In that conversation, I'm trying to remember, I thought we did debate the question of whether or not the employees
Well,
would
it makes sense.
be there. I just can't remember where. For some
Why?
reason.
well, I know she wanted you asked to have the main word condescending removed.
Yes.
And,
And then we changed something from will be to maybe.
yes,
And now,
Those were the two major changes that
Yes.
I remember.
yeah,
yes.
But it makes sense for everyone, including community and board members.
Or everyone, including board members. I think the
Yeah.
previous concern was board members might not think they were covered.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, everyone, including board members,
Okay,
is expected.
so is that a recommended change to that wording then, that it should read everyone?
What I
and
think,
board
I mean,
members?
we have had disruption by employees, so, it shouldn't be an exemption.
okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
Can I-
Go ahead.
I would make a recommendation that you say employees, comma, community members, comma, and board members.
Okay.
Because I think it is not clear, there is a question when an individual gets up and speaks and gives public comment at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to the board. If they happen to also be an employee, sometimes they don't see themselves as an employee. They say, I live in the district and I'm a community member. So their comments may not be through the guise of the fact that they're an employee. It might be because they are a member of the community. So.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I wanted comprehensive coverage as well. And whether they're seeing themselves as community or employee, it doesn't matter to me.
So what was said was, I don't know who made the suggestion, but it was suggested to include staff, students, and the word everyone.
Oh, yeah, we don't have students on there.
No, we don't. And that's.
That was the suggestion, to include staff and students and the word, everyone.
Mhm.
May I ask, I think we're reviewing the minutes. And there is an additional line beyond what you're reading, which is, you referred to it, there's a forthcoming legal update that will be incorporated before bringing the policy, which implies to me that yes, there was a general consensus, but it needed additional review.
Well, yeah, because, what Dr. Andronis had brought to our attention was that there were, update number 44 had.
Yeah.
And we were waiting to
Yep.
get that language from them, right?
So then maybe the answer is that we need to take a look at this again.
Okay.
Because we haven't compared it to the update that came from the policy
Right.
update.
And so my question is there a request to have the minutes reflect something differently? Or is it sufficient that in the minutes it says that we will be that you all will be reviewing it?
Oh, I
In
see.
light
You're
of
trying to
that.
get us back to the item, which is the approval of the minutes.
Right, so I think the minutes, because it says we're gonna.
Oh, how orderly.
I think the minutes are okay, because it says we're gonna look into
Yeah,
it some more.
that was
Yeah.
what I was asking, whether you all felt comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been first, second, and we discussed, we'll call to the vote.
So what did we just decide? We just decided we're tabling this and.
No, we're voting on the minutes.
On the minute.
Oh, on the
And then
minutes.
we'll talk about the
We're
other.
just voting on the minutes right now.
Yeah.
Back to the minutes.
Okay, so, all in
Okay.
favor of, yes?
Yeah, sorry.
We had-
thought we
Oh,
had
I
a
didn't
hand,
know.
but we
Okay.
didn't. Okay,
That's not his hand?
no, that's the
Oh,
computer.
okay. Okay,
So
okay, I,
Oh, I.
okay,
You would
the
know.
motion has been carried, so it's, motion two. Okay, and now we are on agenda 4.1, Policy Board 2355. Trustee Croninger?
Well, I did bring it up in the context of the minutes because I wasn't sure whether that was intended to be, that's it, except for the league suggestions. And so I would continue my suggestion that we broaden this. Everyone, including board members,
staff, community,
Staff.
students.
well, or employees, students, and the community are expected.
Okay, so are you making a motion?
Sure.
Okay. And so the sentence you would prefer for it to read, community, comma, employees, comma, students,
Everyone including
comment, and board
community.
members.
Yeah,
Okay,
Then is it are expected or is expected? Because we're talking about everyone, so
it would still
everyone.
be R.
Are, yeah,
would be?
everyone are expected?
no, is expect, you're right, is,
Everyone is.
and is.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ellen.
That's for many
Right,
versions.
because it modifies everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Is.
Okay.
Okay.
Is expected to be courteous and respectful to those participating in the board meetings. Comments that are abusive, harassing, or condescending will not be permitted. Furthermore, speakers that engage in name calling or other will be found in violation of this policy.
Okay, I noticed that nowhere on here does it reference our superintendent. Meaning,
Well, our superintendent is an employee.
I'm an employee.
She's an employee.
I know, but after going to that workshop, it said that, and maybe this, it doesn't relate, maybe this one, it doesn't apply, but it was saying that you should always reference your CEO/superintendent in your policies.
I don't think this fits.
I don't think it fits either, but I just wanted to still put it out there.
That's a recommendation. I mean, all of the board, barring it being a statutory
Mhm.
requirement, this is all suggestive language
Okay.
and the board has the ability. I would say I fall in the category of employees.
Okay,
And let's put it this way, if I'm doing any of this, I'm not gonna be your employee. most of the time.
Okay.
So,
Trustee Croninger, she made a motion. I'm going to second it.
And with recommendation of added language to the first sentence. So I guess it would read community, comma, do we say employees or we're going to say staff?
Well, we're starting with,
Employees,
we're starting
because-
with everyone and then including
Mhm.
community, comma,
Employees is more inclusive than staff.
students and board members.
So you want the first word to be everyone?
Yeah, including community, comma, employees, students and board members. That should be everyone.
I still feel that condescending is, you know,
Oh, I thought we took that out.
it's there, I see it there.
Yeah, that was,
It's reappeared.
yeah.
we can take it out.
Yeah, we said we were
You're-
I just feel like it could.
No,
be-
we agreed to take it out.
Yeah. So it
Okay,
would be abusive or harassing.
right.
Okay.
And then you also made the recommendation, I don't know if this, the word reassessing versus assessing, does that still apply to this or no? You remember that?
What's that? Where?
Remember see, I have this. Remember the professional ethics? Last time we met about this, or this something completely different?
Okay.
Which was a part of the package,
Yeah, but that wasn't about,
that wasn't about this?
no, the question was whether or not, I think the conversation had to do with whether or not.
Okay. And then, the other
Right.
suggestion was must versus shall. So
Mhm.
on the last paragraph, last sentence,
Last sentence.
yeah, the last paragraph,
Representatives of the press.
see where it says shall be allowed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was the suggestion to put must be allowed?
I don't think it matters. I think shall is fine.
Yeah, shall's fine.
Okay,
Shall is the legal word.
okay,
Yeah.
right.
There is one recommended change that might be worth reviewing from the policy folks. They recommended just a slight rewording of the before removal warning. And this,
What paragraph are you on, please?
so it would be under this, Bella, this
Okay.
one from the
yes,
league.
Yes.
And if, what stood out to me is there's a warning before the removal. It
Yes,
says before removal for conduct other than an individual's use of force
Mhm.
or a true threat of force, which is missing from
Yeah,
our current copy. So I think it's worth.
so I would like, to be honest, I would like for us to have this a part of our decorum policy. The recommendation coming from the league, the language.
Mhm.
So it would just be an update of that
So we would just put-
paragraph.
so it'd be this paragraph here would be adding to our policy.
So it would be replacing, I
Well, we
think.
can't just add it because we've sort of overlapped it. Are you substituting that paragraph?
Yes, I would say it is a substitution of that penultimate paragraph that starts at the very bottom of page 1.
Before removal.
Okay,
So it would just be a
So we would-
full cloth substitution.
Yeah, okay.
Like,
I like it.
So substitute this, got it.
Mhm. For this right here.
Yeah.
Trustee Stoner, oh, you got it, okay.
I got it. Thank you.
I don't see any waves, okay. Oh, wait a minute, there is, there's one.
Professor Olguin.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of your discussion. And I have one question. There's a person who is to Erica's left. I'm sorry,
Yes,
Could
this
you-
this is
I
our
get- I'm so-
Executive Director of Institutional Effectiveness.
Oh,
Dr.
oh,
Maxwell.
yes, okay, fine. Zoom is very small and sometimes you cannot make out everybody, and I haven't recognized your voice as of yet, but yes, great. Thank you. The last meeting that we were at, you caught several of the issues that were of concern, but there still remains a couple of them. One is that I think that it would be helpful for this BP 2355 on decorum if prior to that first paragraph in that you've modified that's in pink, if you would just have like a one sentence or something, this policy applies to Board of Trustees meetings, or something that contextualizes what this policy is all about. There's sort of implications for that later on, towards the end of the policy, but I think that it would be helpful, just a very quick statement at the beginning. Secondly, there were questions that were raised at the last meeting, and that was in terms of definitions. Some of these terms are just not well defined. They're not clear. They're not well defined. We don't know. And for example, it looks as if the policy is really designed as to address two things. On the one hand, the policy is to encourage courteous and respectful speech, and to curtail abusive, harassing, and I think you've eliminated condescending, or name calling or other personal attacks. So on the one hand, you're dealing with speech issues. On the other hand, you're also dealing with behavior issues. And that would be the disrupting, disturbing question mark I have about that, that impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. So that's how it is that I'm seeing both of these. But in terms of, we again asked this last time, and that is, how is it that you are defining abusive? How is it that abusive is defined? Or harassing or condescending, when condescending was in there. I think that you need to have a clear definition of abusive. Are hurt feelings abusive? Are hurt feelings abusive? If someone says you or she's a liar, is that abusive? Is that harassing? Is that condescending? I'm not sure. Or is it factual? I don't know how it is that you're making, or how it is that this gives direction for the chair of the board to make those kinds of determinations, or for the public or employees to be able to parse out, gee, I'm overstepping the lines when I'm calling somebody a liar, or I'm overstepping the lines when I'm saying, if I refashion liar into something else. Or if somebody calls somebody else a racist, is that indecorous by this policy? We don't know. Or if somebody calls somebody a social justice warrior, or a Republican, or a misogynist, or somebody calls somebody else woke, in terms of the speech provision, you're making, or you're discussing the decorum policy, which seems like it may overlap with or overstep First Amendment kinds of issues. And I think that there are probably some potential problems that could occur if you don't have these definitions in place. And at last meeting, we also raised other terms that needed defining. DEI, for example, and those individuated. What do you mean by inclusion, equity, anti-racist, and so on? Somebody last meeting referred to, there's a pamphlet or a policy, or there's something that's written up, and these are again all part of this definitional thing that I'm asking you to consider including, or at least referencing, so that the public and the staff members and so on are able to understand what it is that is permitted, what it is that's not permitted. And I think that I'll leave it there for now. I do have one other comment, but it's not particularly pertaining to this discussion on this item. So I'll raise my hand another time. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Trustee Croninger?
I think the simple way to answer the first question is to rename it decorum in board meetings, unless we have in mind reaching out to any other meetings, which I didn't think we did.
I like that.
And then as for the definitions and First Amendment issues, we're going down a rabbit hole with that. It would just be very difficult and add a layer of confusion, I think, to be attempting to define those terms. It's going to be a decision of the president, and it's going to be like the pornography sort of thing. I know it when I see it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think defining it is going to be helpful at all. I mean, you just move to, well, what does this term mean and that term and so forth. So I wouldn't do that. And I think it would, we'd spend an inordinate amount of time trying to figure it out. I am looking to see, we eliminated, and I think it's a good thing when we switch to the league version, that to remove someone, you have to have a vote of the board, because that in practice presents, basically a difficulty in implementing in that moment, in that situation. I think it is better to leave it with the president. And you've got a warning, and I think that responds in part to the definitional question. I mean, somebody is giving you a warning first and saying, hey, you're stepping over that line for me. Don't do it. And then the only other thing I'm thinking, if I can get it correct, that the last paragraph of order cannot be restored by the removal in accordance with these rules, the board may order the meeting room cleared. I think that should be the president who orders it. I mean, I don't know what it is to say the board orders it in that situation.
You're right.
Are you reading this one?
I'm looking at, I think either one, they both seem to say that
Yeah,
the board may
okay.
order the meeting room cleared. But I think that's more practical to make it the president.
Okay. Okay, so,
Trustee Gallimore?
yes.
I noticed that in the CCLC decorum sheet, they don't even have a paragraph about courteous and respectful. They just go right into impeding, rendering infeasible, disrupting, disturbing. See, they don't even try to say you have to be nice to each other. They just say you can't disrupt the meeting. So they don't get into this conversation we're having.
Right. So
We have to decide if we think it's worth it.
I'm okay with either or, us keeping in the courtesy language. I'm okay with removing it and just be more aligned with the lead. I'm also okay with keeping that portion of the language as it is. Trustee Croninger, I agree with you as it relates to replacing the board with the president may order the meeting cleared.
The board president.
The board president.
Yeah, let's specify,
Oh, right.
not me.
Yes.
Okay.
Right,
The board
right.
The board, okay, hold
Board
on.
president, yeah.
President, thank you. Now, what, can you just clear, are you agreeing to the language that a vote would have to be made before removal of a person, or you are disagreeing with that?
Disagreeing.
I'm asking.
Yeah, but you said disagreeing
With what?
with,
The
are we gonna
language
have a vote to
About
remove
voting to
somebody?
remove someone.
Right, but
Agree?
the league version has taken that out.
Right, but we don't have to, I mean,
And I think that's the better way to do it. We,
So- So you're suggesting that we don't vote to remove someone?
correct. That there not be a vote. I'm also noting, and this is technicality, we capitalize board
Yeah.
throughout.
Mhm.
And we haven't always done that here,
Okay.
but I like having the expected to be courteous and respectful
Mhm.
because I like setting that standard.
Mhm.
I like the setting the expectation rather than just jumping into this is bad.
Okay,
Can I make a suggestion?
yes.
And this is to avoid some of the trickiness of defining and acknowledging that possibly not defining could be tricky as well.
Mhm.
That you have really delineated, or there may be seen as some redundancy. If you look at the last sentence, furthermore, speakers that engage in name calling or other personal attacks will be found in violation of this policy.
Hold on, you're on the pink part?
Right.
Okay,
If you were to take out furthermore and remove the potentially vague language of comments that are abusive and harassing, the speakers that are engaging in name calling may stand as your definition in contrast to members are expected to be courteous.
okay, hold on. So you're suggesting to remove the word furthermore and keep which part of the sentence?
So
That makes sense.
if it were to everyone including, et cetera,
Mhm.
expected to be courteous and respectful to those participating in the board meetings, period. Speakers that engage in name calling or other personal attacks will be found in violation of this policy. And then you go on to delineate some other behaviors.
I like that.
Does that cover it enough and take out some of the risks?
I think the abusive and harassing is important.
Okay,
Yeah,
I would get rid of
Yeah.
it. The condescending can go away, but
Yeah, yeah.
we have a whole set of policies on harassment.
right, right.
okay,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you for your suggestion on removal of the
Yeah.
word furthermore. I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
To the comment made by Mr. Alton. Oging, Dr. Oging. Again, thank you for sharing your feedback. I don't believe that we need to provide definitions for the words abusive, harassing, courteous. I don't believe that's necessary. You mentioned terminology like DEI and equity. Yes, the person that said that there are definitions already created, that was me at our last meeting, and I actually brought the booklet from the league, and all of that, all of those terms are here. We can just have this hyperlinked on our website if we need to. I only have this one hard copy. I don't know where I can find it on the website, but I'm sure we can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
but it's from the Community College League of California, and it has all of those definitions to the word race and privilege and prejudice and over racism, racial justice, implicit bias, intersectionality, institutional racism. It has all of the definitions that have been provided by the league, and I read over them, and I agree with the definitions. So we can provide that for review. And then the other comment about, let me see, definitions, terminology. I think that's it. But we're at a good start. I like the recommended suggestions, and is there any other hand up? Yes, trustee Croninger.
I was just gonna say, I would rather link the community, the chancellor's office definitions for information rather than simply adopting them, because I think there's a lot there, and my reading of them a while back was not particularly comfortable with some of them.
Are you talking about the definitions?
Yeah, those definitions of various things, and I just would prefer not to be in the middle of that. Now, when you have something like BEI, it's an acronym
Right.
for starts. You know, you need to define your acronyms. And then beyond that, we've had several people observe that we ourselves as a college might want to develop our definition of it, but not in this policy.
So we're keeping in the courteous.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, be courteous and respectful.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. No, that's good.
Breaking it into 2 sentences.
Okay. Carmina, were you able to get all of that?
I have one question, and that for Marcia, at the very beginning of your comment, you said something about clarifying that this was for the board and other meetings.
Not of.
Oh, the title of the,
The title is decorum, so I said we can clarify by saying decorum in board meetings.
Yeah.
As a title.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So I guess we need to vote on these recommended changes? No, or are we gonna table this for the next meeting?
No, I think I'm ready to, I move.
Okay.
That
Thank
we
you.
approve, let's see, what's it called? It's called 2355 with the changes that we discussed today.
Okay, and I will second that.
And send it on to the board.
Yeah, we can send it on.
Are we-
Of course.
It's been through BPAP, et cetera, right?
I have no idea. Has this been for DCAP?
It says here, I don't.
May
It says
2020.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
that's a while ago.
no, they have to go back to the.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so it's been first and second, any further discussion? And Pamela, you got all the suggested,
Would you like me to read them back?
no, you don't have to read it. I know we had a lot of discussion, so I want to make sure we didn't. miss
Keller also was taking notes, so you two can compare to make sure.
And
we
there's
get it.
a Zoom, isn't there? Or a-
Yeah, I think there's.
Audio.
Okay, no further
Who
discussion.
doesn't love to rewatch Zooms? I mean, really, it's so fun.
Don't tell me about that. I've seen too many.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call for the vote, trustee Starter
I made a motion to.
Oh,
approve
yes.
it
Yeah.
and trustee Gardner.
And to send
Yes.
it on to the next body.
Okay, we got it. Trustee Croninger?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? All right. That was very good. Thank you. Okay, we are now moving on to item 4.2.
And this item I put on just to have a conversation, not to take any action.
Mhm.
And, you know, this could also be subtitled the superintendent president stepping in it deeply. I was unaware that this would cause such consternation. So I will start off by offering that as an apology. I certainly didn't mean to ruffle the many feathers that I appear to have ruffled across the campus. So I apologize for that. I had heard from various segments of folks that there was that the BPAP, when I said something about BPAP, I was in several instances where people would say, well, I don't even know what that is, when do they meet, or what have you. And as we were looking at how to enhance, empower, and really broaden College Planning Council, as is the case at other colleges, I thought introducing board policies and administrative procedures to a larger discussion there would be a good idea. And again, I apologize, I did not mean to cause such an uproar about it. So the point of having it here is to talk to the board policy committee about what I had in mind. And the academic senate, Kim Monda did reach out and say, can we please not do anything and have conversation in the fall, which I agreed to. So it wasn't I agreed to it and then we're gonna do it exactly as I said in January. That was never the intention of the conversation. The intention was, I didn't realize this was gonna cause so much chaos. And that we do need to have more conversation. And I think there needs to be more sunlight on BPs and APs. So I backed into it the wrong way. So I'll just say that right at the front, at the outset. I do think that CPC should have more of a role with BPs and APs. And I'll say this as one of the original members of BPAP when it was created back when I was a dean here, and it was created because the college was transitioning to the CLC policies and procedures and numbers and and I've worked in 3 other districts. So I've worked in districts where it's a much broader discussion than a small policy group. So that was the idea behind it. It wasn't to take anything away. It wasn't to not have shared governance. It was, in my mind, to have more shared governance, but clearly I did not go about it the right way. So I apologize for that. But in order to move forward, the board policy committee does need to weigh in so that when I'm talking to the shared governance leaders, most of whom are on this Zoom right here, they know how you feel about it, and I know how you feel about it, so that we can then have the conversation and figure out how to go forward.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So is this diagram, is this the recommended
this
process?
is a suggested process. Yeah,
okay.
so the process, yeah, you could pull that up. So really, ideally, the policy process was that, you know, we would have CCLC, obviously, there are, you know, statutory things that need to be addressed, but also we have to, under our accreditation standards, we need to review them on a regular basis. And so we would have, CCLC would have the updates. We'd also have proposed BPs and APs that don't necessarily come through that update.
Where would they come from?
They might come from, recognizing that there's something on our college that a part of our
Yeah.
process, but we need a board policy.
Okay.
You know, so it might
something's
be-
come up and we need a.
Yeah, and we need a
Right,
policy,
right.
like we need, you know,
Okay.
because you always need a policy to fall back on, basically.
Thank you.
And then there's the scheduled review, and there's a copy of what
Right.
the schedule is in your. So then would be chapter leads, which is that, you know, in the 1000s and the 2000s of the board policies, the board has a lot to do with those. But then if you're in the 4000s, a lot of that is academic affairs. The 5000s are student services. The 6000s are business services, as well as some of the 3000s. And the 7000s are human resources.
I gave you all this information.
No, I haven't. I just want to know, what does chapter leads mean?
Meaning, that's what I'm gonna get to.
Okay.
So because each one of those areas is, people have to live within those policies, it impacts them. So for example, if you're in student services, a lot of the policies that you live under are in the 5000. So let's say enrollment priorities, 50-55. So those are the people who do those, you know, administer those policies on a daily basis. And so as it's done in other institutions, student services would take the first pass at a board policy that needed to be either updated or needed to be created or what have you. So it's really looking at the subject matter expert.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the idea.
Yes, thank you.
And then it would get agendized, that board policy and AP and/or would get agendized. And as it was getting agendized, it would come here and then, but at the same time, it would go to CPC so that CPC knew it was being talked about.
Okay.
And then it would go out to the constituency groups, meaning go to the academic senate and go to CSEA and go to the ALA and FAN and the confidentials. And then it would go, and then if there were any feedback, if there was feedback from the constituency groups, that would get put in, would get incorporated before it went back to CPC. And CPC would hopefully recommend it to me as a superintendent president. And I would recommend it to the board policy committee that then recommends it to the board. So that was just a suggestion. But then I had a conversation and I was unaware of a different cultural piece here. And do you want to take it from there?
Well, as you can tell from the end of board policy 24M, this policy has gotten consideration a number of times.
Yeah.
And the process is, which is really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Is page 2, where it says process for amending board policies or developing new policies. And the process here, and I'm confining this to board policies, and the underlying theory here is that board policies are board policies.
Right.
And therefore the board has a pretty significant role in what's going on there. All new board policies or substantive changes to existing board policies shall first be discussed by the board in draft after notice at a regular board meeting. After the initial discussion by the board, if the consensus of the board is the new or amended policy should be considered, the draft then goes to BPAP for input, and there's a deadline there, and that was an issue and so forth, because sometimes things didn't come back. And the board can request the superintendent president to develop a policy or, and so forth. I mean, where you get that draft, you need to be considering a draft as a board. Otherwise, you're just sort of wandering around. You need to be looking at something. And so you get that draft either from the superintendent president drafting up something we ask her to draft up after we've talked about it, or somebody who is particularly interested in it has a draft and they want to put it in front of us. And in some cases, that's board members.
It could be an ad hoc committee of the board.
It could be an ad hoc, and it has been an ad hoc at times. And it's also been somebody who is, particularly interested in a policy or a new policy. So, but if you go down to the next paragraph, it starts in any person or governance group proposer may propose to amend a board policy or the adoption of a new board policy. First, discuss the terms and rationale with the superintendent and the board president. With their concurrence, you put it on a board agenda for that first discussion. So it's open to everyone. And we have, in fact, this decorum policy has come through a community comment. It's open to everyone to make a proposal. It goes through, initially goes through the superintendent president and the board president to see if this one makes sense before it goes to the board agenda. And if there's a disagreement there, it either gets withdrawn or the agenda policy applies. Okay, so this is separate from APs, and I should stress that. I think that one chart
For BPs.
for BPs and another chart for APs. And the idea is that you really have something pretty good to look at in the first instance. And you have a concept that the board is discussing, and then the board can decide, we like this idea, we want to go forward, or they can say, I don't like this idea, no reason to spend more time on it. Because when you have a procedure that runs it through all of the consultation and CPC and everything before it gets to the board, you're spending a lot of time and energy on something that when it gets to the board, they may say, I don't like this. This is not something I want to do.
Right.
So that's kind of the structure behind this. And you would not have gotten, I think, policies like our student or employee student relationships policy. What was the other one I gave you? I forget. There's another one that, you know, got particular board attention by folks who were interested and put it forward. And it got a lot of consultation too, but the consultation was after we had worked on a first draft and then it was, you know, edited back and forth. So,
The efficiency was the other policy.
yeah, we had initially written a policy relative to improving efficiency.
So that all makes sense. What I was curious about, though, is that the board has a board policy committee. So if the board has a board policy committee, then what's its role relative to policies starting with the full board? So I guess that's a clarification. Forget about the BPAP piece of it, because that's something we have to settle here, but how then does a policy get to the board? Does it start with the board refers it to the policy committee that then starts it? Or does a policy start with the policy committee and the policy committee decides whether or not it's significant enough that the board should hear it or see it before it goes anywhere?
I've been thinking about that since our discussion, and I was gonna say, my inclination is that when we say it's before the whole board in a draft, we ought to stick with that, so everybody gets their chance to
In
comment.
draft
In the
before it's
draft,
gone
in
through
the
the
beginning.
college
And then
thing.
the board, having discussed it, can refer it to policy committee for further writing, for polishing, for whatever. I mean, that's happened, I think, in the last year, where the board has said, we'd like the policy committee to look at this, or something like that.
Mhm.
So that's my inclination, that the policy committee also has other things that it works on, that will come from BPAP's or whoever's responsibility
Mhm.
to do the league updates and all of that sort of stuff. And also, we may generate ideas. We may generate ideas that we then take to the board.
So, from the workshop, it was highly recommended that there be a scheduled process of reviewing board policies. Not waiting for someone to say, I have an idea, I think this policy needs to be updated. Here's some of my suggestions, and then they request for it to go on our agenda. Yes, that's also a way for policies to end up on our agenda. However, at the workshop, it is highly recommended that we have a set calendar of reviewing all board policies. So when I saw that, I was like, yeah, that's exactly
we
what we
do.
need to have. But it sounds like we haven't been doing that.
Well, I can't speak for that. I don't think we've
You know,
seen
there
that
hasn't been
many.
any consistency
But-
on reviewing all, was it 107 board policies? Hold on, where's my paper? To me, it just seems like there hasn't been a consistency of reviewing all 172 board policies. And so what happens is when it's time for accreditation, we find ourselves in a situation where some of our policies are not up to date as it relates to these legal updates. And so I provided this packet for you at our last trustee meeting, and it shows you that 107 of our board policies were all updated. And that a lot of them has to do heavily with our credentialing. I believe that we should have a set calendar, and stick to that calendar. And when people want to make an
Yeah.
addition,
Yeah,
a recommendation to say, hey, I think this policy needs to be looked at, here's some suggestions. That we are open to that and we allow that to get on our agenda. But I also agree with, it makes sense to have stakeholders from these content experts of when it relates to policies that designate how they get to operationalize their department. Who are we to say, make an edit to a policy and we have nothing to do with that department? I agree, somehow we need to make sure we have more feedback from people that's being most affected as it relates to certain policies. I do agree with the whole CPC thing, what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I just want us to make sure that we are getting feedback from the constituents that is gonna impact the most. And when I saw this, it gave me the impression that it kind of puts accountability on these departments that, hey, we're making you a part of this process. So when a policy comes up that impacts your area, you legitimately have an opportunity to speak to that because it impacts your department. So I'm okay with having some kind of CPC involvement. I agree with there should be a BP chart and an AP chart. I agree with that. But I wanna see us be more intentional in reviewing our policies. And from the workshop, there should be a policy or two policies should be a discussion at all of our board meetings.
So that's what I'm kind of hearing is that there's BP and then there's AP.
Right.
And maybe there's different procedures. BP does it this way and AP does it this way. Is that what you're hearing too?
Well, BPs always go to the board. They start with the board and they go to the board. The AP is the district.
Yeah.
And Liz has her hand up.
Okay.
She might be.
Sorry about that. I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. For one thing, just a little bit of history. We haven't had a board policy subcommittee for a long time. We went years without one. Just so you know, so it's fairly new. So I think part of this process is we need to do a little history and see what's really going on. And as far as the review, if you look at the first page of one of the AP 2410, there is a schedule for when we're supposed to evaluate the APs and BPs. However, some of the time when BPAP was doing it, we got interrupted in our process because like the board brought to us a policy for the interaction between staff and students. And we spent a long time on that because it was very tricky to do. There was a lot involved in it. And so, and I thought at one point BPAP was a subcommittee of CPC, but for some reason things never got cycled through there. So I would like us to look at the history and modify it if possible to make it work better or come up with another process that actually works. I'm not sure this one completely does because policies are negotiable if they affect staff. And I don't really want to get into detail on that if we can work it out some other way, but that is an option if policies are created that really impact staff and they don't really have a say. And if you're going to be researching, I mean, I've been on BPAP a long time. It takes a lot of time. So if you want to take this through CPC, you want every every CPC meeting to spend more than half their time going over these. So I just think you need to do some research and see what's happened, what works, what doesn't work, how much time it takes before you jump right into something. And Mayor Erica, maybe what you've said at the beginning of the meeting, you intend to do that. But you really need to look at what's going on because it doesn't seem to be what's really going on is what you're really stating here.
Well, what I can tell you is that I came from an institution where College Council, which was that institution CPC, had all the policies and APs go through them. They went through them and it didn't take up half of the meeting because they had all gone through shared governance and they were there at the beginning of the process and then they were there at the end of the process. So I understand your concern about it taking up a lot of time, but I think with however the review works, that's where that's in those areas. But my concern is, I'm looking at the schedule, chapter 4 and chapter 5, none of that happened. I haven't seen any updates.
That's because we got distracted by other things that came up to the higher priority for us. But until we really look at what went on, we really won't know. But I'm not saying that not to do shared governance. That's what BPAP was. And then we were supposed to take it to our groups after it was decided at BPAP to take it for consultation. And so I don't know if some people may not have realized it was going to consultation, depending on, if it goes to the Senate, it goes to CCG. Some people don't read their emails, so they don't know. So I just think it needs to be looked at instead of, some people come to one meeting at BPAP and say, oh no, we have to do it a whole different way. And I think we should really look at what worked and what didn't work and come up with a process that is a shared governance process that satisfies the needs.
Okay, I see another hand raised.
That's Cornelia.
Cornelia.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to say thank you to Liz for reminding us of this history, and she has this history. And also for saying, emphasizing a lot of things that Faculty Association and Faculty Senate have said as well. I would like to build on that. So Liz hinted to the time-consuming work that BPAP has been doing and that policy discussions, policy review involves. And I just want us all to remember the first half hour of this meeting when you, the board, discussed, and I think it was your second time you discussed it, a fairly small policy. I think if you take out, the line feeds and the header, it's about 1 page of text. And it's only about you. It's about how you run your meetings. There's not a lot of other people, other groups involved. And you had a very substantial discussion about this 1 page. We have policies that are more than 20 pages, where we have everyone involved, like the harassment policy, the filing a complaint procedure, right? The 3052 that Liz just quoted, right? Everyone is impacted by them. Everyone needs to have a voice. The content is often not easy, right? And we spend a lot of time on that. I do not see how CPC can do this, right? But we want to have this intense discussion, and we want to have this intense discussion, not the Senate here and the FA there, and the classified staff here and the managers there. And if you want to bring that flow chart together, there is it appears that the new process is envisioning that we bring something in writing, and then it will be Keller and I believe one other administrator.
No.
Kind of.
Another administrator. It would be the area that it comes from. That wouldn't necessarily be an administrator. It could be a faculty member.
Okay. So, but then there would be 2 people, even if it's a faculty member. I tell you honestly, I don't think we should put that responsibility on just 2 people. I think the exchange that we had in BPAP between these different groups was super valuable. And I truly believe that we can't do this in CPC. What I totally agree is that CPC, you said it, maybe has a place at the beginning for input and at the end. I think that is, nobody would debate that, but the current proposal at the table is doing away with BPAP. And that is where I think we really need to revisit this idea, because I'm not in favor of this. The FA is not in favor of this. And I know what I heard at CPC, I didn't really feel that there was anybody else in favor of that. I would love to you saw the AP 2410 where the first page was that time chart. I would invite you to please go to the last page. And that is a visual of our current process. It kind of looks like that. And I would like to invite you to kind of maybe if you have the other chart next to it, the new proposal, what you might see just from the visual is that the current process has detours. I hope I'm using the right word, right? It's if there is in the process, we have it comes from the chapter leads, the initial draft comes from the board and then going through the chapter leads, then goes to BPAP, then BPAP comes up with a draft that goes to the constituents groups. The constituents group then bring back their feedback to BPAP. BPAP looks at all those, discusses, maybe comes up with a changed draft. That's when we have the detour, when it says, oh, if BPAP, if from all these different inputs, we have something substantially different, or at least partially substantially different, it goes back, right? And I think this is important. This is really important as well. And there's like a few, it also, when it comes to the board gets a draft, the board's not happy. And we had that in 3052, I believe. BPAP came down with BP's 3052. The board said, well, we started with this, you have this, we're not happy with this, this is our feedback, go back. And that's what BPAP did. So I believe this process, we can make changes to include, to give also the policies maybe a little bit more sunshining. Like bring this, oh, by the way, this is what we are working on now. Bring it to CPC to make sure every part, it's on a public agenda and everybody saw it. But I believe this process in general was a good one. It was a really good one, is a really good one. And yeah, thank you.
Trustee Croninger.
I would just point out that the chart that we have in AP 2410 doesn't actually reflect what is in the board policy. I mean, it suggests that things come to the board at the end, even though the recommendations category looks like it could proceed without that initial board discussion. And so, you know, those things as well need cleaning up. Again, I think it's a 2-chart process. I don't think it's a 1-chart process, because the board does not normally is only occasionally involved in APs, whereas it has said it wants to be, you know, asked or told about an AP.
Well, it also doesn't indicate here that administrative procedures are recommended to the superintendent president for approval. Just because BPAP makes changes doesn't mean they're approved.
Right.
So that also has to be clarified.
Yeah.
So,
And I think adding, I think adding the BPs and APs to the CPC agenda would at least bring sunshine, because right now there really is no evidence of. I think there are a lot of people across the college who have no idea that BPs and APs are being worked on.
right.
And I remain concerned that we were supposed to look at 2 chapters this last year and nothing was done. And so I think that has to be addressed if, you know, the process or the way that BPAP, if that stays, it has to be addressed how it actually conducts its business, because we can't, you know, our accreditation is in 4 years, which means we're going to start a self-study or an institutional self-evaluation in 2 years. So we're not, if we stay at this pace, we will get popped on this. And so if there's a way to actually get things done, then we need to do it, but there needs to be more sunshine, because there is not enough sunshine on policies and procedures. And this needs to reflect the fact that things are recommended to me, and then I recommend to the board, if it's not an AP. Dr. Olguin.
Dr. Olguin?
Yes, I think that a larger issue that's connected to this is that the communication channels at the campus have been lacking for years. I remember Tara at the CPC meeting 3 years ago, three, if not 4 years ago. Her making that recommendation actually was when Dr. Murillo first arrived at the campus. And that was going to be a high priority for CPC. And then it just sort of like faded. But that's part of the reason when the BP process actually was working fairly well until it got derailed somewhat. Liz gave the reasons for that, Cornelia as well. And even when things got to the academic senate, for example, it might be farmed out to a subcommittee, but it never got down to the faculty at a division or a department level to really be able to discuss this and to. It's not that certain policies never got, but there wasn't really a consistent movement from the academic senate, for example, to the downward for there to be faculty discussion. And that's just been part of the poor communication of the college just generally. I'll leave it at that, but thank you.
No, thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Jonas, thank you for sharing that our accreditation is in 4 years. That was actually going to be my next question, because if we're not doing, even with the current process, if we're not reviewing policies as this schedule indicates, that's a problem. And so we could talk about the history so that we don't repeat what doesn't work, but I don't want us to get hooked on not moving forward. We need, at the end of the day, we need to review our board policies and our administrative policies in a comprehensive, consistent, efficient way. And it's a shared responsibility. So if it does come to your group of people and now it needs to go to faculty, we need to do a better job to make sure the faculty is aware that we are making changes to policies that will impact how they execute their role and responsibilities. So we need to do a better job if faculty is not getting the heads up on this. And people need to read their emails. So
I think at this point, if the goal is to keep some form of BPAP, then we have to figure out how BPAP and CPC can communicate more on a regular basis and how we can determine how policies and procedures are going to go through and actually make it through. Like this has to get done. And so, that's one thing that has to, there is no two ways about it. So if BPAP stays, then the question is, how do we change BPAP to make it more efficient and to make it better able to have the discussion that needs to happen, to have the consultation from the individuals who actually show up to BPAP, back to their constituent groups, back to BPAP, and then to CPC. And maybe it's while they're going to their constituent groups, whatever policies or procedures are being reviewed, get on a CPC agenda so that CPC is aware of what is being talked about. And I think that will help facilitate getting the policies reviewed. But as Marcia brought up, there is a question of where the board and the board policy group live on the graphic that's already in that's already in this policy. And Cornelia has her hand up.
Yes, Dr. Is it Alzheimer's?
Alzheimer's. First of all, yes, thank you. I was looking in the reaction for sunshine because I liked Erica's. And I found it, but then it disappeared when I went to click it. Because I really like the sunshining aspects to CPC, and it also will help probably with the outreach to everybody on campus, every faculty or every staff member. I mean, not every policy is of the same interest for every faculty member. And maybe there is like faculty members say, okay, like that is not such an interesting policy for me, but there are these super high level interest policies, and that's where we are really engaged. And for sure, it is a little bit also on the individual faculty member side, how much do you really want to know and really want to read all that stuff? I totally agree on the time factor that we need in BPAP. And I think Liz can probably help me with this. For example, in the spring semester, there were a number of BPAP meetings either not called or canceled. And I think that didn't help either. So maybe we just in BPAP, make a list, what needs to be caught up, and then have to possibly schedule additional meetings until we are caught up.
And we had leadership changes too.
And yeah, that we had.
I mean, that caused a lot of issues when the person who was supposed to run BPAP changed. And then we didn't have meetings, and we had meetings again. So yeah, we have to really find somebody that could lead the meetings and keep us
the meetings
going.
will be led by Keller.
Well,
Keller.
good Keller. Then Keller is going to be the responsible one. Hopefully she'll stay around.
Yeah, I really think that would be really helpful, because we saw similar things in negotiations, that the one thing that is really slowing things down is if people in charge on like for chief negotiators or whoever the administrative chair of BPAP is, right? If that person changes, and then kind of like for sure this person wants to educate themselves on, where we are with these policies, but Liz is totally right. It did slow our process down, and that is what I'm really hoping we will not have anymore. So
well, I think that, and no wordsmithing meetings. I think that's what we have to cut down on, because BPAP was slowed down. I think that is the challenge here. It can't become a wordsmithing meeting. It has to be, we're reviewing this policy or procedure. It came from the chapter leads that are articulated in the existing policy. And there shouldn't be a ton of wordsmithing once it's been to the chapter leads, because they're the experts.
I respectfully disagree with this, because I understand maybe there is like chapter leads is a very small group. Usually 1 or 2 per chapter, right? And I believe when we get the feedback from the constituency groups, there might be more wordsmithing happening. And like you did wordsmithing right here in this meeting, right? Like it has to happen. It has to happen. That is an important factor in BPAP. And maybe we could prepare better for the meeting and limit the wordsmithing time to a minimum. I'm totally on board with this, but wordsmithing might have to happen to some extent, because that is how we are integrating all these like different aspects and viewpoints and expertise. I mean, it's really amazing how also what you learn as a faculty member when staff members report how a policy is affecting them and what we need to pay attention to. I'm sorry, 2 chapter leads, even 3 chapter leads cannot replace that. They can't. So I really think wordsmithing in the committee is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keller.
I do want to respectfully push back a tiny bit about your assessment of our chapter leads and point out that in our existing AP, this AP 2410, there is a paragraph that I think is really crucial here. And I'm sorry, this copy does not have a page number, but the paragraph is this: administrative procedures operationalize board policies And as such, they are developed by the program or office responsible for that particular operation. That is the expertise that we have failed to rely on enough. And it is my intention to honor that expertise and to expect that the wordsmithing does not happen in real time, in committee time, because that, of course, there will be things that need to be discussed. And where words really must be decided, of course, they're going to happen in real time. But I think that we need to honor the expertise, our operational expertise, and it's codified in the existing policy that I think we have perhaps not followed to the extent that we might.
And then Liz, that's her hand up.
Okay, Liz?
Yeah, there's wordsmithing and wordsmithing. When we first had BPAP, wordsmithing was commas and quotation marks and which word to use, which we don't do anymore, thankfully. There's also wordsmithing, like when we did Chapter 7 in HR, which is very important. There were things that were brought up by the chapter lead. At least I think it was a chapter lead, whoever was in HR at the time, that really had to be discussed because it affected our hiring committees. It affected, if you could be on a hiring committee, if you were the incumbent. I mean, things were really, we needed to talk about. So sometimes we need to talk about things, while other times I can understand that we don't. So Keller, hopefully you will be able to guide us in that area.
Discernment. Thank you.
I have a question. So according to this, we're behind in reviewing our policies, the
Yes,
board policies. And so we're supposed to have done Chapter 4, all of Chapter 4 and all of Chapter 5.
yes.
That should be. Okay,
But I don't know what we did do. So I think that's the next step, is to go back and assess where we are relative to all of the BPs and APs.
Yeah, I don't think at the board level, we have seen very many
I
policies
don't-
come back. Now, that may mean that people looked at the policy and said, it's fine,
Mhm.
don't need to do anything.
Mhm.
But we should document that.
Yeah, we need to
Yeah.
have that agendized somehow,
Mhm.
that
Right.
you know that it's been reviewed,
Yeah.
but there were no changes, so that's why you didn't see it.
Who does that? Who's responsible for that?
Well, I think we are. We are, and working with the constituent groups,
Mhm.
because they're the ones who, they're the ones who look at it.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Say, yeah, this looks good.
okay.
so at the workshop, they're using, is it Diligent?
Yeah, it's board docs,
Okay.
That's board
Yeah.
But, no, they're using Diligent, which is a different.
which is board docs.
But they said it was different somehow. They were able to integrate, they showed some other software. The point that I'm making is they created this really nice Excel spreadsheet on their
Oh,
on your
okay.
desk, like a dashboard, and it actually shows you, even when you come across a policy and you say, okay, there's no updates are necessary, they still
Yeah.
note on it that it was reviewed and no changes made.
Yes,
So yes, we do need to create that too.
I think it's with a particular college that had an
Yes.
example spreadsheet,
Mhm.
very, very good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I know that Rita has looked at it.
Okay,
It's probably a lot more transparent and
Yeah.
user-friendly than the current. And the current tracking sheet is only accessible to folks who are on the committee.
oh, okay,
And so having it sunshined in board docs
would be better, yeah.
quite useful. Yeah,
Yeah, other than the fact that we list supposedly at the end of a policy.
not
when it
all
was
there.
Yeah.
reviewed, And that probably does not match up.
Right, well, and you have to know to go and look for the policy
Mhm.
to figure out whether or not it's been reviewed, so it shouldn't be that hard to
Right,
figure it
right.
out.
They also recommended that we create some kind of appendix so that when there are recommendations for changes, we make a little notation as to the rationale, like why was this change made?
Mhm.
Because 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I don't expect to still be here. I mean, I don't know if that's something I'm supposed to be doing as far as trustee, but it gives people context as to how you got there with this current change. That was another recommendation.
Right.
Okay,
And I would add that that's been an issue where we get a recommendation back, say, from BPAP. After, we've sent it forward for that kind of review, what we get is a red line,
Yep.
but we don't get a why.
right,
Yeah.
Right.
And the why is what you care about.
My hope is that we will develop very efficient and effective templates that are based on what we have been currently using, but very clearly delineates what is legally mandated, what are the areas we are currently in discussion on, and provides that rationale as a talking points cover sheet with anything that gets routed. So that will be part of the record.
okay. Well, this was a really good discussion. I'm looking forward to the follow-up. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Yes.
So when will we expect some follow-up on this and what's the next step?
Well, I think the next step is for us to both take into account the suggestion of having two different charts, which would be true whether you were looking at the existing or a new one, to have it BP and AP. And then we also need to be more intentional about taking board policies to the board prior to this. And then what we need to do is work with the constituent group, basically EC plus, to refine the process to retain a version of BPAP and incorporate BPAP into CPC so that there's sunshining at the beginning. Because just going to the board isn't the same thing as sunshining it.
I know, we're boring and no one watches.
Yeah, you have accidental viewers, people,
But speaking of which, I have suggested CPC should be on YouTube as well. Because that's communication, and especially if you're gonna be adding this discussion in,
Right.
you're helping with that communication.
Well, it is recorded, I believe, right? We
Yes.
record it. So we do record it, but it could be on YouTube as and since we're gonna go to face-to-face meetings in the fall, that would be a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, so what I heard was we're going to look at the current chart, which needs to be updated anyway, and also include CPC.
Include CPC, but also refine BPAP and its relationship with, and how it gets its things and sunshining, because
Okay.
that needs to be more intentional.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Does that sound, I'm looking at the constituent leaders? Yes, no?
Yeah,
Got a thumbs up.
All right,
Okay,
awesome sauce.
all right. We are now moving to our last item, 5.1, items for future policy considerations. Well, I went through all my notes from all our meetings, I've been on the board, and my notes from the workshop. And we tabled a lot of policies.
Okay.
I'm not saying one should be looked at before the other, but it was highly recommended at the workshop to make sure board policy 3900 is up to date. That's the one that's released to speech, time, place, and manner. I don't know when the last time we looked at that one, but they kind of said, if your accreditation's coming up, you want to make sure that one is definitely up to date. Also, the student housing policy, make sure that's also up to date.
Student housing?
That's what, yeah.
I don't think we have a student housing.
I don't think so.
Maybe we have something on cooperating with local.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at it right now.
Okay, and then there was, one, relating to,
I think it was probably, they were probably recommending student housing, if you have student housing.
okay,
So that you have codes of conduct and Title IX and that kind of stuff
That's a whole. nother-
involved, because that's a
world.
whole. Yeah, but I.
and then, there was another recommendation, related to do we have anything that talks about students camping on the campus, given what's going on? Do we have a policy about camping and sleeping on the campus?
We have the time, place and manner
That's
stuff.
right. And
So we might
But
wanna just,
it might need camping in there. anyway.
yeah,
Yeah,
we might wanna, just have that on the radar. And then again, they made updates to like 107 board policies, so I hope that we just get into practice of seeing some of these policies on our agendas so we can get them updated as it relates to new laws that was passed and the policy analysis that was conducted. So for instance, they updated the board policy 3540, the sexual and other assaults on campus, that's been updated. I don't know if that's something we need to. I know we have the quorum 2355. We just made suggestions for that. But do we have any policies in addition to that one that we're gonna start looking at next?
well, that's a good question.
Well-
I don't know.
We did have, and it's my fault for not sending it to you sooner. We did have that ad hoc committee that recommended equal employment opportunity focus, particularly for adjuncts and student hires.
Which board policy was that?
I don't remember off my head, at the top of my head, but we had an ad hoc committee that was,
from the minutes, 3420.
Cause you said it's in the minutes?
It's in the minutes from last time.
Okay, because I wrote down all the policies.
that's probably a different
Okay.
one. I don't know. Because I,
We approved it with the edits. It was, we didn't table that one.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, items for future consideration. I thought it was under there. Sorry. My bad, my misread of the minute.
yeah, I should go back and see what the edits were. Do we have what they were?
I don't have them in front of me, but I know we approved it and the edits appear to be small because we approved it.
Yeah, if they're small, they may not be the ones that we originally proposed. So
Okay,
anyway,
so, will board policy 2355 come back to us at our next meeting, which is it in July?
It is in August.
August.
Yeah, the beginning of August.
And
But that policy has not gone out to the constituent groups, correct? 2355, have you all had conversation about the decorum policy?
it looks like, no.
I don't-
I don't think so.
Okay, so
Okay, so
that,
that's gonna go to them.
so that needs to
yeah,
go
I think
to
it
them.
goes to BPAP.
Yeah. so
Okay.
23.
So it's gonna go to BPAP, so then, policies for the next meeting in August. Do you want to start looking at, you got a recommendation?
No, I don't have a recommendation because I don't have an idea of where we're starting.
So we want to do that first, see which one we are really behind in. Okay.
Did you check for things that were referred by the board to the policy committee?
Yeah, I have a whole list right here.
Oh.
So, what I can do is I can send you the
Yeah,
email.
the list would be helpful.
Yeah, I have a whole
Send us
list.
the email, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna look.
Because
at
that was referred from the board, full board, to the policy committee.
Mhm.
But the policy committee has not reviewed or taken any action. Okay, if you could send that, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Because then we'll know, we'll have a starting point there.
And then if you, trustee Croninger, you can also look in your
Yes.
arsenal of notes and cross-check so we can move forward with practicing, the talk. All right then. I don't see any hands raised. Trustee Stoddard? No. Okay, well, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned at 5:53.
Right, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.